Well, everybody, the containment unit, welcome to another interview. And we are excited to bring to you Brynn Metheney, who is the concept artist or one of the concept artists on Ghostbusters Afterlife. Brynn, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being part of this conversation. And I am so excited to get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So the thing I'm curious is just a general, how did you get into being a concept artist? How did you get into doing this as a living?
Oh gosh, it's a bit of a journey and sort of an indirect one. I started out well, I studied illustration in school. So I went to school to learn how to make an image for mostly editorial illustration, like magazines and books, publishing, that sort of world. But as a kid, I had always been really excited about concept art, animation, movie art, that kind of thing. I was raised on a healthy diet of Jurassic Park, Alien, Terminator, all of these
My
like
people.
movies. Yes, all of these movies you probably shouldn't see as like a 7-year-old, but I watched them all the time anyway. And so when I got to illustration school, I really wanted to pursue concept art. A lot of my teachers were very confused by that, but it was fine. Anyway, so I entered into the illustration world as an editorial illustrator and doing publishing, but was sort of constantly posting online, networking with other creature artists in particular. My specialties in creature design and animal anatomy. So I basically kind of jumped the gap from the publishing world into film world via getting really lucky, knowing a few people and being recommended by a couple of my colleagues. So it was kind of this indirect, direct way of getting in. It always had been my goal. So I really just kind of kept my eyes on it and pursued it as hard as I could.
Can I ask just like a really dumb, ignorant question?
No questions are dumb, please.
You mentioned being in college for art.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between art and then like concept art? Like how is that different?
So in concept art, your main goal is to sell an idea and to explain how something works. And in illustration, you're more kind of telling a story with one image or kind of telling selling an idea about a concept. With concept art, it's kind of like that, but you're also doing these like, little drawings of like, hey, when the terror dog opens its mouth, there's barbs on the tongue, and like you have to show that. So all of the little like nitty gritty pieces, and even some strange things where it's like, if we wanted to like have this hand rise out of this smoke cloud, what would that look like? Just kind of random stuff. Your job as a concept artist is to sort of visualize how things work and kind of the general overall tone of things in the movie. So I hope that answers that question.
No, yeah, that's good. That's really helpful. Cool. I think that's part of the reason why I love concept art, is because I do love those little animations of here's how this would move and here's what this would look like. And I really love that stuff.
Yeah, likewise. I loved poring over like the making of books, I think back in the day when they used to like show the programs on television where it was like the making of, and you'd watch all the artists work, or then DVD specials came out. Now with streaming, it's a little harder to locate, but I think they still exist. So
even the making of book, like the making of book for Afterlife was hard to get for a while.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But boy, am I glad they put that together. It is such a wonderful collection of work.
So
it's
good.
Beautiful.
It's got to be surreal then that you have art in a making of book.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those moments where I felt very, very proud. That's kind of been my ultimate goal, is to get into an art book like that. And especially, I mean, they really spoiled me by putting a lot of my work in there. So I was really excited about that. And getting to send it to my parents was really fun too. So, yeah.
I have a really great question to tag into what you were just talking about, but I feel like it's too early for it, but I want to ask it anyway because you teed it up perfectly. See, you said that concept art is selling an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some of the art that you've done for Afterlife, and there's a couple things in there that one of them, I think it was a hardware store, maybe mini puffs in a hardware store, and it was 4th of July stuff. So and the 4th of July, like we saw pictures from the set, and it looked like the set was decked out with that, but they kind of took that stuff out, or maybe it was a Centennial, whatever. It's not really present in the film. So I assume at some point the mini puffs in development were going to be attacking this hardware store. But were you given specific direction, like the mini puffs are attacking the hardware store, go crazy, or was it like one of them has a hammer and one of them has a tape measure? Like, what was the kind of direction you were given on that stuff?
So that was a ton of fun to work on, because us as a team in the art department, at that point we were in pre-production and very small. I think there was me, my production designer, the art director, a couple of set designers, and there were a few other artists that were remote, but it was very little. So we were kind of in talking about Stay Puffed and how we wanted the minis to terrorize the town. We really just kind of sat around and ate lunch and we're like, what if we did this? And just kind of talked about it. You know, I was like, what if they put face masks on, or like, you know, tried on funny outfits, or, you know, there was one where I drew them like running with a chainsaw, like a bunch of them had kind of piled up and they had like a chainsaw. It was really funny. The Roomba was one that I think maybe my art director pitched. I forget who came up with that idea, but it was a big collaborative effort of all of us kind of just spitballing. But there were some moments, like with the 4th of July set treatment, where they had specifically requested that I put that into the art. So it's a combination of a lot of things, where the director or the production designer will request and be like, oh, you know, can you make sure that this from the script is included? Or even because I'm given a copy of the script on a good day. Sometimes some projects don't release as much, but for this I got a whole script to myself, and I got to read through it. So I had a lot of cues. I was there with a highlighter, just kind of making sure that I knew sort of what the flavor of the scene would be. But it's a combination of all of it, because it's a big collaboration. You know, you're kind of just jumping off of, you know, each other's ideas, and it's a ton of fun. So
absolutely. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, it was the coolest. It was very cool.
You mentioned being fans of films like Jurassic Park and stuff like that. Were you a Ghostbusters fan growing up too, or is that?
Oh something... yeah. I mean, Ghostbusters was definitely in my like annual watch. I feel like me and my dad would sit and watch Jurassic Park, Alien, Terminator, Ghostbusters, The Goonies. Predator, just kind of anything that had monsters and like violence. I think was kind of popular, or I guess in our watch rotation. So Ghostbusters was definitely part of that. But it's interesting because I hadn't really watched the film in a couple years, and then when Francois, my production designer, we had worked on some prior projects together, called me to come onto this project. He was like, you know, are you a Ghostbusters fan? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, who is it? Yeah. Like, you can't grow up in the 80s and not love Ghostbusters. So, you know, yeah.
So then here's the other question that pops into my mind. And Tom is a huge fan of the scene, but you keep mentioning Terminator. Was it your idea for the mini puff with the thumb as they went into the grill?
Oh my gosh. You know, I don't think it was. I don't recall doing that, but I actually just posted on, I have a Patreon, and I posted some storyboards I did for that scene, but I had treated it like walking over hot coals. Like it was kind of like they were daring the mini puff to walk across hot coals, and then like halfway through, he just like explodes into flames. But I think that the thumbs up came from somebody else. So you'll have to find out, because it's a really good, it was a really good nod to Terminator for sure. I loved it. I thought it was so funny.
Well, you're getting a couple more people added to your Patreon here.
After the conclusion
of this interview.
Yeah, there's some stuff on there that, you know, I don't share as publicly. So.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah,
I didn't want to like drop that. You can totally edit that.
Oh no. Like, we're so happy to share that. I like we Ben Eady, he has a Patreon too, and
cool.
A bunch of Ghostbusters fans all over that stuff. So,
oh, awesome. Well, yeah, there's some Ghostbusters content on there. There's also a lot of weird goat pictures and other art that I make. So it's a random assortment of things.
Love it.
This is, I guess, less specific to Ghostbusters, but I'm curious, like if you have a process, so you get a script from a film and you're
Mhm.
having to create something just off the top of your head that maybe has never been seen before.
Yeah.
So what is this process of creating new creatures? What is that like for you? How do you go about doing that?
So, in the realm of something like Ghostbusters, really what you're working with is a pretty established looking IP. There's kind of a framework that you should try to work in. It's sort of in the realm of like wacky and scary at the same time. So, you know, Slimer is kind of a scary character,
Mhm.
but he's also kind of silly. He's like kind of this, you know, green blob with a big mouth and all this. So, you know, I think in keeping that in mind is really important, particularly if you're working with an established IP like Ghostbusters. But they all kind of, everything kind of starts the same, and that is with reading the script, trying to pin down sort of the like flavor or tone of the film. Is it, you know, a comedy? Is it a dark fantasy? What is it? And with Ghostbusters Afterlife, it definitely was a comedy, but it was more toward the 84 version where it still kind of had a horror vibe. So it was a dark horror comedy. So I tried to kind of keep it in that realm. However, in my own interest, I'm always trying to find ways to interject, like, I guess, nature and region into things. So in some of the designs for some of the unused ghosts, there was one that I really wanted to pitch. I wanted there to be a Dimetrodon ghost because it's an early reptile. A lot of people think it's a dinosaur. It's a dinosaur or the animal with the big, you know, sail on the back.
Mhm.
And that comes from the fossil record showing that there were Dimetrodons in the area. So I thought it'd be kind of funny and just sort of a nod to like dinosaur nerds, but also like, you know, maybe a ornery school teacher from the 1800s. And then, you know, just cosmic terrors, that kind of thing, like, you know, tentacles and kind of Lovecraftian sort of stuff, because Ghostbusters is kind of all over the place. You know, there's the sort of, do you believe in Loch Ness Monster and all this kind of, you know, talk about paranormal cryptids. So I really wanted to try to add a little bit of that into it as well. Didn't have too much luck on that front, but I think it was more of a studio decision than anything. But and you know, I think trying to interject like some of the original flavor from Ghostbusters into my process is really important, but also trying to pull in like, you know, what would be interesting for the area or the region or even the fans of Ghostbusters, and like, you know, how can I make it feel new and fresh while also kind of remaining familiar. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and
Okay,
you know,
cool.
it wouldn't be the first time that I'm aware of that they've tried to put a dinosaur, an ancient reptile, in a Ghostbusters film.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, good.
You're right there with some of the artists and concept workers before you.
Yeah, I really, oh yeah, I mean, the best, truly. It was quite a treat. There were some moments, they had like an archive of some of the old concept art that I was allowed to look through a bit, and it was really, really awesome to see a lot of that work. So that's cool. I love that.
So you mentioned 84, you know, and obviously if you look at the film, it's very much a love letter to 84. But if you look at Ghostbusters 2, and we've spoken to some of the creative behind the scenes folks as well, some of the ghosts have a little bit of a different aesthetic, you know, especially the Scoleri brothers. So did you draw any inspiration from Ghostbusters 2 at all in the look of the ghost, or were you specifically like stick to 84?
We were very adamant about sticking to 84. It was pretty much like, they were like, you can watch Ghostbusters 2, that's fine, but don't reference it. Like, they were really trying to stick to that original flavor, I think. Particularly with like Terror Dogs and Mini Puff, but then also with Muncher. Jason, I think, wanted Muncher to be kind of an extension of Slimer in the same family of ghosts, so right. Or taxonomy, I suppose, if you will. So yeah, he was very adamant about that.
So when you were designing, you know, looking at the list, for instance, of the sketches that you so graciously offered to do for our group,
of course.
What did you find to be, I guess, I don't know if I want to say more personally satisfying or more challenging, but I'll let you pick. Is it the new characters like Muncher, or is it adapting a character like the Sentinel Terror Dog, where you're taking something that exists and putting that new, fresh spin on it? What is more entertaining to you, I guess?
You know, it's I guess all of them sort of fulfilled me in different ways. Muncher was just the worst character to find. He was so hard. It took us like 3 or 4 months to figure him out. And he's not even that complicated. He's really just a little blobby, like kind of baby looking ghost with a couple arms, and he's, you know, kind of this weird little creature. But oh my God, I did hundreds of drawings to try to figure him out. And Jason would just be like, oh, you know, like we're getting close here. And then we'd go that direction. He's like, no, it's not right. We got to go back. And so that was fulfilling in the sense that when I finally figured it out, or when we all figured it out, because it was all of us, it was like, okay, we finally did it. Thank goodness, you know. And I like Muncher. I think he's really, I think he's cute, but I don't know if everybody thinks he's cute, but I think he's kind of cute. And then, yeah, you know, the working on the Terror Dog and the Sentinel, and even Stay Puft was, and Bug Eye, actually, I got to redesign or revamp Bug Eye for this. You know, that was fulfilling just because it was touching a legacy of, you know, all these different crafts people and artists who had poured so much love and care into these characters back in the 80s. And, you know, now, especially, you know, with the studios revamping the Terror Dog as a big puppet, that was really cool. So, yeah, I guess all around, they were all my favorite. It's hard to say that there wasn't one.
I just want to touch on Bug Eye real quick. I was in the audience at New York Comic Con when they premiered the movie to 3,000 fans. And there was a lot of cheers in that. One of the loudest cheers was when Bug Eye popped up on screen, because nobody saw it coming.
No, he was such a surprise. And what was interesting was and this is, I'm sure you might know this, but he came about because the film was delayed because of COVID. And so we had time. And so they were like, well, what if we put in another ghost? How about Bug Eye? Because someone, I think Jason or someone was like, Bug Eye's a good one. He's kind of like an obscure ghost that the fans will really love. And it'll be, you know, a ton of fun. And so I remember literally sitting there just sketching Bug Eye while I was sitting next to Jason on a couch while we were talking about it. Like, and it was right at the beginning of the COVID stuff. We weren't even wearing masks or anything because we didn't know what to do. Like, we hadn't really received the rules yet. So we were like, oh. So yeah, Bug Eye was such a wonderful surprise. And it was great too, because I had told my husband, like, oh, you know, I'm designing this ghost. And I showed him the image and he was like, oh, I had that toy as a kid. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So it was cool.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I think the cool thing, Bug Eye was just unexpected surprise, and I love that that's one of the ones you worked on. I was curious. This is maybe just super nerdy on my end, but again, watching a lot of the same movies and appreciating a lot of the same franchises. Do you have like some favorite concept artists? Are there ones that you really looked up to and worked who you especially admired?
Yeah, I think that the two that I grew up looking at was Crash McCreary. He was Stan Winston's like concept artist. So he did, I actually have a book. It's like right here. Awesome. It's called The Winston Effect. And it has a lot of his art in it, particularly from Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park was probably one of those like most formative movies for me, but he works in pencil and it's like insanity level stuff. And I just really appreciate his craftsmanship and how well he explains his concepts. The other concept artist I really look up to is Terrell Whitlatch. She did all of the concept work for Star Wars Episode 1, actually. So she's a really like world-renowned creature artist. I love her work because she has such a like elegance and understanding of animal anatomy that is just solid. Like, she's one of the top leading artists in that field. So I really am inspired by her and Crash. I think they're probably my two most favorite concept artists. I do love the team at Weta. They have really inspired me, particularly with Lord of the Rings. I grew up watching Lord of the Rings as well, which was another big, like, you know, oh, I want to become a concept artist. When I saw the people at Weta, I was like, they're amazing. I want to go do that. And so their work on Lord of the Rings and also the Kong, World of Kong, that book is really good. So those would be some of my favorite artists. Shout out to Ben Wooten. Hi, Ben. I don't know if you see this because he works at Weta and we're kind of like friends. And yeah, anyway, he's an amazing artist also. I would throw him in there. He's incredible. So
it's so interesting that you mentioned What in Lord of the Rings, because Randy Cook, who designed the Terror Dogs for the original 84 film, also did Gollum and cave troll work on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So you kind of like, in a way, picked up that mantle a little bit.
Oh, that's so cool. And I'm so like humbled, and I feel like so so like, really, me? Are you sure? Like at most of the time in all of this, because there were so many moments like that in the production where we'd sit down with like, you know, legacy people who'd come in and advise us or whatever, you know, and I would just be sitting there like, are you sure I get to be here? This is crazy. Like I remember one day I like had a page in my notebook to take notes, and all I wrote down on the page was just holy shit. Oh, I hope we can curse. Sorry.
You can. Yeah. No, go for it.
But yeah, that's all I wrote. I was like, I don't even know what to write, because everyone is in here is amazing, and I just am trying to absorb it all. So it was a real honor
to be a fly on the wall, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to know the answer to this, and I feel like you might have some insight. And if you can't answer it, that's totally fine.
Okay. No
okay. So you talked about Muncher and how it took a little while to find Muncher.
Mm-hmm.
Muncher's a little different from some of the other ghosts we've seen because he's got multiple arms, right? So so you find yourself asking, well, what would Muncher possibly be a ghost of?
Right.
And I'm wondering if there's any conversation, whether it was in the art department or with Francois or with Jason, is there any kind of frame of reference or a Bible or a guide or a rule that says like, well, Slimer's a ghost of a human, but Muncher is, but he grew arms of a ghost. Like, I don't know how to put it, but it's fascinating the way the ghosts exist in this world. And I wanted to know if you had any insight there.
So the way I had imagined Muncher was being sort of a desperate little ghost who couldn't get enough, because metal doesn't have anything in it. It's just kind of this dead material that he's eating. And so in my original sketches of Muncher, probably some of the more terrifying ones, because in the beginning he was kind of like I imagined him being the ghost of a miner who couldn't, because everything takes place in a mine, who couldn't get enough of the metal he was mining for. So he had actually like 10 fingers on each hand, and he was a lot scarier and a little grabbier. So I think some of his multiple armness stems from that, of being kind of greedy in a way that's like, I need to grab everything I can. Plus, there were two other things that I think led to the multiple arm decision. And one of them was the visual effects supervisor at the time, Sheena Dugal, offered a lot of photo reference of water bears to Jason. And Jason was like captivated by these little creatures. And if you've ever seen a water bear, they have like, I think they have 6 limbs, and it might be 6 to 8 limbs. They have a lot of limbs. And so I think he was really like kind of fascinated by that look, which I think pushed Jason into making the ultimate decision that Muncher would have multiple arms. And then from my point of view, you know, in adding to like the sort of greed aspect of Muncher and trying to grab everything he can, his world is nothing but pipes and caves. And so I kind of also thought that maybe just out of necessity, he might have multiple arms to kind of move around in these environments as like some kind of fun bit. But yeah, he's pretty unique in that he's got the 4 arms, six limbs total. So
yeah, that's really interesting, the way you put that. I never thought of it that way. Huh.
Yeah,
you definitely answered my question. It's fascinating.
Okay, good. I was really trying to make Muncher feel, I think, more sad than maybe he ended up being. But we were really trying to push that kind of desperate idea, because it's like a miner, and you know, hollowing out a mountain is intense. So
yeah, I think that does come through. You know, when he's sitting there with the fire hydrant, and he looks very sad in that moment, and it got an awe, you know, with 3,000 Ghostbusters fans. So you felt for him. So
yeah, that was such a rewarding moment for me, actually, was sitting, because I was able to see it in a theater, and it was a much smaller crowd. It was here in Santa Fe, and like everything, you know, nobody goes out after 8 p.m. But it was a much smaller crowd, but everyone awed at Muncher, and I was like, oh, you get it. It was really nice.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So you earlier you mentioned something, and now I'm never gonna stop thinking about the mini puffs with a chainsaw. And to me, that's extra captivating because the mini puffs. I've said this in a couple interviews with some of the voices, but it seems like the mini puffs are a little inspired by either Gulliver's Travels, but in my head, it's Army of Darkness, which may have been in your rotation, maybe.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, Army of Darkness absolutely was. Yeah.
Right. So I immediately pictured the mini puffs, carrying away the chainsaw hand. But I wanted to ask: is there anything that made it, relatively far along that got cut from the film that you really wish had, or maybe a specific design that you're like, oh, that would have been great? And if it's something being saved possibly for later, don't spoil it. But is there anything that trigger or checks that box for you?
I definitely do think there were some antics that I thought mini puffs would get into a little more. I think one of them involved a nail gun shooting at a man. Like you do. The chainsaw was another one. So those very violent options. But I think actually I wish there was a little more of the Sentinel involved.
I agree.
And the Sentinel was interesting because Francois approached me. He asked me to design a terror dog Minotaur. And I was like, okay, Minotaur is kind of a cool name, but how about we call it a Sentinel? And Sentinel came from, I was playing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign with my husband, and we were like all Sentinels in the game. And so I was like, oh, the word Sentinel is really cool. And like the role of the thing was kind of this like, guardian. And so that's a great name. So why not? So that was kind of cool to see that stick. But I wish more of that character was in the film because there were some really, really stunning moments with it that were listed in the script that I think would have just been really awesome to see. And I know that they were kind of there up until a certain moment, and then it kind of changed. But that would be one thing I wish would come back was that big boy.
So let me ask you, because I'm totally with you on the Sentinel thing, and even like I'm gonna have Tom just got a 3D printer.
Oh, nice.
So I want that Sentinel statue that we see the kids holding in Egon's farmhouse.
Yes.
But
yeah.
So the Sentinel, just again, maybe this is stuff I should know, but I don't. The Sentinel is a different creature than the Terror Dog. So the Sentinel, it is a different body. It's not just a Terror Dog standing up, right?
No.
And so if you can, what was the original design or intent for a Sentinel?
The Sentinel, I was supposed to be sort of I don't even know if I can say this, but I don't see why not. It was kind of an in-between. I'll just say that, sort of an in-between creature. So that was kind of the idea behind that guy, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't want to say too much about what their role was, but I think it was kind of cool. So, yeah.
I guess maybe we'll find out later. We'll find out.
I'm sure.
Time.
I mean, again, like whenever whenever you have your interview with Jason, I'm sure he'll spill more of the stuff because he'll actually have more power.
Sure.
But yeah, I think I could say that. So
yeah. And they made an action figure of the Sentinel Terror Dog, and it had legs.
Yes, they did. So there's something funny that happens with films, and it's that toy production happens way before things are already like done. So sometimes there's things that come out in toys and you're like, where is this in the movie? And it's like, well, it got cut. You're like, oh, I guess they made a bunch of plastic toys of this thing that doesn't even exist, which is kind of cool from like a collector's point of view because it's totally not something that's in the film. So
So
but yeah.
Were there designs then? So I always assumed that for instance, that the Sentinel Terror Dog figure had legs because it was like we saw it in the trap kind of coming out of the trap. So had it had a moment before it zipped away, maybe it would have had legs. Were there designs where it was walking? It had legs like that?
Yes, actually, yeah. They're in the art book. There's I think I might even have it here. There's a side view of I did like a whole anatomy study of this thing. Even though it doesn't have anatomy, it's a ghost. There's no muscle, but I put muscles in there because you know, when you build these things in 3D, you really have to build it like it's an animal and animate it as such. So I always offer an anatomical point of view. Gosh, I hope this isn't. Here we go. Yeah, there's literally like a whole page where I explain not only their.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So that's a whole thing.
Very cool.
There's male and female and everything. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, but
It is.
the in-betweener is what we'll say. But yeah, they are they were one of my favorite things to work on, and they had the biggest arc too. I think, like, in terms of, well, Muncher was hard to find, but he was a joy to work on the whole way through. The Sentinel was kind of this like everyone loved it or hated it. It was like one or the other, and so it was like, you know, maybe that's why I ended up leaving, but those of us who loved it really loved it. So
yeah, I think it's a very cool design, and we love the Terror Dogs a lot, Matt and I. Like, we're big. I mean, I got Terror Dogs up here, but we're big Terror Dog supporters. I've heard a couple things where I think Arian might have said this, that at one point they were toying around with modifying the Terror Dog a little bit. Did you always stick to the original designs for the standard Terror Dog?
So I was the one who modified it. And so what I did was I modified it by changing some of the anatomy to make it able to run around in 2020 as a CG animated character that had no bounds, because in the original 84 version we were more constrained with stop motion animation, and trying to make something, you know, feel real was a little more difficult then. Now with CGI and all this, you could do all kinds of stuff. And Jason had called out specific moments where the Terror Dog would be like, you know, running through the street. You see it run through the street and chase the little RC motor trap. And so there are these. So in my exploration of the Terror Dog early on, I had modified its anatomy to look more dog-like. And if you saw it like one or the other, you might not notice it, because it's really not noticeable to anyone who isn't like a dog anatomy person. But if you see them side by side, it is very different. So the Terror Dog was a bit of a collaboration between all of us, and ultimately Ariane ended up really solidifying that design in the end and making it very true to the 84 version in terms of its body shape. I adjusted the proportions. So if you look at the original 84 version and the I guess it's 2021 version. I say 2020 because it was supposed to come out in 2020. 2020 version of Terror Dog, the proportions are a lot different. Our Terror Dog's a little longer. It's got a little more of a quadrupedal stance. So, and there's actually spurs on the back of the feet instead of the hand claw. There was a hand claw in the original 84 version, and I ended up modifying it to a spur because I thought it would be a little more, it would give the character a little more function, and it could like kick stuff. Like I had it, you know, kicking cars and stuff like that out of the way, but you know, that didn't happen. So yeah, there was this that was kind of how that happened. So I had tried to push as far as we could, and then what was great was Ariane kind of pulled us back, so we ended up in this really beautiful sweet spot, because those Terror Dogs just they're awesome. They turned out so good. So yeah.
Oh, they look incredible, and we did a signing with Randy Cook. I don't know, last summer.
Wow. Oh,
and
cool.
He couldn't really talk about it at the time, but he's like, "Oh, I went and saw the new Terror Dog, and it's amazing." And you know, he and both, you know, Ivan said this in the past, but that stop motion, specifically when it's running, nobody was really happy with that. You know, they were under a real time crunch. So I think your anatomical changes were probably needed, and something they didn't even consider back then because they had such a limited amount of time.
Yeah, they had no budget, no time. It was bananas. They were able to make such a great movie out of what they had. But yeah, that was another real fulfilling thing for me too, was to be able to, you know, explain and kind of shed light on animal movement, which is something I really love and specialize in trying to make characters work as an animated character. So I know.
Great.
So
I have one last very important question for you.
Oh my gosh.
Surrounding mini puffs. This is probably the most important question of the interview. So,
oh
no
gosh,
what is
good
your?
thing we're sitting down.
What is your favorite gruesome mini puff death?
oh my gosh. Oh, I mean, I do love the grill because of the thumb. I thought that was so funny. I also loved the scene where Podcast takes them all out in the car. I thought that was really fun. And I don't, it's hard to choose. I think the grill might be my favorite though, because it was just, I don't know, it's silly and demented and wacky. So
yeah, they just totally went crazy, and it's amazing. And they need an animated series yesterday.
I know, or just shorts. Like every now and then, just come out with like a crazy short where they show up somewhere in the world, you know, and go on a crazy antic. That would just be wonderful.
Gosh.
It would be so good. It would be so good.
It's true.
Well, I think that concludes our time for today. Brynn, is there anything that you're working on or upcoming that we can expect to see from you in the near future, or at least anything you're allowed to talk about?
Well, there's definitely some films I've been on, but I can't say anything, unfortunately. So, you know, if you're interested in the film work I do, you know, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. And then I also have the Patreon. I'm currently writing and illustrating a book with a publisher about the Southwest and the desert flora and fauna that live there. So I'm really excited about that. It's kind of a love letter project that I'm working on.
That's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, those are the updates. So thank you so much for having me. This is such a wonderful conversation. It was a real pleasure.